Now, it gives me immense pleasure to give to you our first guest this DeFi evening. They are all over the crypto news worldwide, and especially since yesterday, things just got magnanimous for them. Yes, with over 32M dot contributed over by 81K community members, Akala has won the first parachain auction on Polkadot. And it's an absolute honor to ask you all to join me in congratulating the co-founder herself. A big, big, big wave out to you from all of us out here, Bet. And it's an absolutely phenomenal experience having you with us today, especially after such a big win. Guys, needless to introduce, our first speaker, Bette Chen, is the co-founder of Laminar and Akala. Akala is the cross-chain decentralized financial hub and stablecoin platform of Polkadot that makes it fast and easy to use or build any financial application, improving the trading efficiency and also saving time. The platform offers a suite of financial primitive as well as Ethereum compatible makers, and that makes Akala the landing partner of Ethereum DApps, right? So over to you, Beth. It's an absolute honor again to have you, and they're all yours.
Thanks very much for having me here. I'm actually calling in from New Zealand. It's almost 2 a.m. for me. And it is the crowd-long auction week, and I got the time wrong. So I thought it was Friday afternoon, but turned out to be a huge time zone differences there. But it doesn't matter. Glad to be here. Yeah. So today I actually have a presentation. I was asked to give a presentation. So yeah. So so today's topic is about DeFi in the era of Internet of Blockchains. I think everyone is here in some level, probably used some DeFi protocols or DeFi applications in one shape or form. And then most of those applications actually happen on very similar blockchain architectures, regardless whether they are on Ethereum or other Ethereum compatible blockchains. What I want to kind of like share today is a little bit more on what the future will actually look like, which might not be exactly the same as what we are used to. I think DeFi only like started 2019. During those times, I was a user. Well, earlier that year, I was user of Compound, Maker, and it was very interesting back then. But see how fast people get used to things. It's only 2021 this year, so it's only 3 years. People would think that is the only way. That is the mode of success. It's only 3 years into using a particular application. So, but we are, compared to many of the technological innovation along the way, this is very early stage. So don't think what you see today is going to be the end goal, right? So hopefully today I can share some idea to open up some thoughts and also some build-up and innovation. So so I'll go through a bit of intro and then some context, and then go a little bit more into the Akala architecture and how we think about building the next gen DeFi platform, as well as empowering our ecosystem to do so. So about 3 years ago, we were a team of 4 co-founders. But back in 2018, we were already building on top of Substrate. And back then, we were probably the only external teams building and contributing to the Substrate repository, alongside with Parity and Gavin's team. I'll share a little bit more once I get to the technical slide, why that actually happened at such an early stage. Back then, it was Substrate v0. Some version. It was like hardly usable, but it was still. We chose go down the hard path then. So 3 years on today. Someone raise a hand. Should I be worried? Maybe not.
No, please continue.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
take up the
You can
questions in
prompt
the
me
end.
if I need to stop and discuss a certain topic in the chat.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
yeah, sure. So yeah, so myself, maybe just a backtrack a little bit for those who didn't know me too well. So I actually had a background in engineering, specialized in software. That was a long time ago. And I was a developer by trade. Yeah, so engineering, software development, always, is the main thing that I've been working on out of school. However, down the track, things do change, and then you do go to the dark side. So myself went into product management down the track of my career, and then later on, I had my MBA, so gone even darker in my career. But it turns out to be very helpful when I met my co-founders, Brian, Rital, and others, as we have really complementary skills there. But with my engineering background, I can still understand what they are talking about and can still read substrate code and are able to kind of collab at a very, very deep level. So that's how we kind of like how my background was before blockchain. So yeah, so fast forward today, we have over 30 more team members, still growing across 5 different continents and 10 cities. And so working very remotely, very decentralized team across, so myself in New Zealand, also have a core team in China, developer teams, and also have team members in US, Europe as well. So yeah, so I think this is truly a era of borderless development and kind of creation age. We are still relatively small because with all the stuff that we are doing, everyone is like super busy. So we are 90% still engineers, product designers, etc. Our sort of core strength, or what we pride ourselves, is the development power. So we were probably one of the top the development teams in the Substrate and Polkadot, and we actually believe we have to be excellent, like excel in technological innovation as well as in product sort of delivery, so that we can use the best tech and then deliver the vision like behind Akala. And then Akala is only just going to the doors of finance, because a few of us, when we got together, we actually are diehard decentralist. We believe everything is going to turn Web3 at some point, every single industry. But we just chose finance because we think finance would be the first to actually break the tipping point, be able to kind of like really disrupt, because it has the all of the characteristics that it can suck up all the pain of innovation, and has also enough pain of its own industry to be willing to actually move forward. And then a few of us also had TradFi background, so it was like a no-brainer move for us to go into finance for us to build on Akala. Yeah, so I'll skip that one. So the vision for Akala is we set out to build the stablecoin of Web3. So if you think about Polkadot is the internet of blockchain, then we are building, well, not sure if I'm allowed to say that, I'm building the most lowest level of infrastructure, financial infrastructure for the Web3. And that is actually, if you think about the lowest level for the financial world, it's actually the Reserve Bank. The Reserve Bank is a place that you can, in the very, very old days, that you can turn illiquid assets into paper form or liquid assets. So in the old days, it was like turning gold into notes that it can be circulating in the economy and then it is able to have credit systems and to power, well, basically up until now, the world today. Of course, we're no longer tied to gold, but that's where everything started. So when you think about reconstruct the financial world, certainly there are a lot of innovation that could happen on top of it, but really the top-down approach couldn't actually change the fundamental thing. So that's the fintech movement, that it changes the UX, it brings a lot of much better experience for many of the users. But what it didn't touch or couldn't actually touch is the backend systems. So I think the Web3 movement, as well as the innovation that we're doing here at the decentralized finance area, especially what we are trying to build, is at the lowest level to lay the ground so that you actually have a truly decentralized reserve bank to power the economy. So that's through the stablecoin, right? Because that's literally how the Akala dollar mechanism is being made. But I'll go into a bit more detail then. But here are some numbers. I kind of like updated that for this talk. So up until today, I think we have over 800,000 community members around the world. Very proud of that. Hopefully we can also grow a community in India. I think India is a uprising place for blockchain, as well as obviously engineering power, development power. So hopefully we can also have some ambassadors over there and also engage with you guys to do a lot more interesting things together. And through the crowd loan, I think when we before the Akala crowd loan happened, we set internally a few goals ourselves. Winning the first lot is actually surprisingly not the priority. We've learned a few things through the Kusama launch for the Karura chain. The first and primary goal we want to achieve is distribution, because this is the single event. People probably didn't realize why GAF want us to do a lease loan approach, which seems very costly, seems very lots of overhead. But very early on, we recognized that this is the single best distribution event that you could ever have if you are launching a blockchain layer one like Akala. Number of reasons. Number one, folks who are supporting us are certainly long-term users. These are not your everyday you farmer who's going to stick around for 5 hours and then they move to the next farm, right? These are the folks who stake their crypto, stake their DOT for over 2 years, right? So this is long-term supporters. And then second thing, there's a wide reach. So this is a single biggest token distribution event that we have. We allocated 17% of all our token, which has a fixed supply, to all the participants. And then we only reserved 34% for rewards for the entire lifespan of Akala, which is perpetual. So 50% of those are used for the first auction, mostly because, if you want to be the first, then probably you're going to pay the higher price, but hopefully it's going to be worth it. And then it is turned out to be very, very much worth it, because on-chain direct contribution through Akala website, and there is over 81,000 direct contributors. So these are folks who we managed somehow to convert using Polkadot.js to contribute, not the most user-friendly wallets. So if you are engineer, front-end builders, or full stack developers, a better wallet experience will be really welcomed, and you will have a lot of support from all the teams in the Polkadot ecosystem. So Talisman is only one of the projects innovating in this space. So the space is still very empty. So if you're interested, and then so that doesn't count any other agencies that go through agencies that participate, so exchanges and things like that. So So it's very easily to estimate. It's probably well over 100,000 account holders on launch for Akala. And for Karura, we had about 20,000 for crowd loan participation. And then when it comes to on-chain account holders, it's 75,000 account holders when we went live. So right now I'm only counting crowd loan numbers. So it's going to be probably slightly higher when we launch. So that is certainly really high quality distribution. These are all actual users. They hold non-custodial wallet, which can interact with our application. And then we also have a growing ecosystem partners. These are folks who we collaborate with, build alongside with. This doesn't quite count folks who intend to permissionlessly deploy their smart contract on Akala, because you wouldn't be able to keep track of all of those. These are more partners who, for example, current.com or Compound, these type of partner that we kind of actually have to do custom development for them, and also will have a roadmap to be able to support their applications on Akala. Yeah, so that's still ongoing. And then another goal that we set for our crowd loan, in addition to distribution, is liquidity. From Kusama launch, we raised 3% for KSM supply for Karura. And for Akala launch, we also raised about 3%, 3.2%, so it's $32 million. But the Kusama raise, the Kusama crowd loan, actually didn't do anybody any good. It didn't help Kusama DeFi ecosystem, because those liquidity are locked, right? So when we do the Akala crowd loan, one of the top goal is to challenge ourselves to see how we can do better in terms of releasing some of those liquidity, hence the product of liquid crowd loan DOT. I won't go into details of those. If you're interested, can share some links that you can read it, but essentially it releases the locked DOT on the crowd loan, and that will be usable on Akala once we launch. And guess what? 80%, well, probably not exactly, but roughly 80% of all the contributions are in the form of LC DOT. So that's 24 million DOT and over $1 billion notional worth of liquidity on launch. I think that's pretty amazing. And we only had less than maybe 10 or 20% are folks coming from exchanges, which obviously from those centralized agencies wouldn't be able to participate in a liquid form. But I think this is a wild success in terms of distribution and also liquidity event. So with those two, I think we already won regardless the auction, because I think there's a luck in play for the auction. So I think Moonbeam has been doing really well, and also a few other teams that are likely to be launched in the first batch of the parachain. So actually the first batch has 5 teams, and they can all launch on the same day. So I think all of us are actually winners for Polkadot. But of course, the biggest winner is Gavin and his team. The way that Polkadot ecosystem work is you don't need one team to be the winner, right? If everyone doing really well, if Moonbeam is doing really well, and then if other teams are doing really, really well, and then we have this cross-chain communication. It's very important that if we can cross-transact, not just assets, but also other stuff, then we can actually really bring together this cross-chain use case, as well as liquidity sort of overflow the entire ecosystem. And ultimately, it will benefit all the DOT holders and also the DOT ecosystem participants as a whole. So that's always our mentality as to kind of do it together. So I'll go a little bit faster in the next few while so that I don't occupy too much time. It's very interesting. Like I had the slides for a long time, and then I realized, Gav wrote a post today or had an interview that talked about something similar. So Bitcoin is a ledger, and then Ethereum is a very similar technology with ledger plus, scripting ability, which is the EVM, which is just a virtual machine, which is actually basically a computer plus a ledger. So it's a very close technology to Bitcoin compared to Polkadot and the newer sort of architecture there. And then many of the short-term innovations, they are basically copies or copies of existing tech and make incremental improvements that's faster, cheaper, and also help Ethereum to serve many of the users and developers that could not otherwise use the currently very expensive chain. I think all of these are very, very positive. It just shows that the industry is trying to innovate from different angles, right? This is more bottom up. You've already got the tech. You try not to change majority of it. You do a little tweaks, and then you kind of improve, right? So we got to a point where even some of these folks have come to a point they arrive at probably Polkadot architecture is the best. Namely, some of the change arrive at if it's multi-shard, each shard is different, and you have shared security. Well, sounds very familiar, right? This is exactly what Polkadot is doing. So either everyone's going to use Polkadot or everyone's probably going to do something very similar to Polkadot. In any case, I think that's very, very inspiring and empowering for the entire industry. So we're kind of going through this innovation process that finally, from the mainframe computer of just one machine serve everyone into this cloud era where technologies like Polkadot is more serving like the web, right? Really web, decentralized web, and able to scale and then to innovate on top of it. So I won't go into too much detail for this because everyone knows what's happening. So just like skip through that. So a couple of like visions that we have. So we believe the future for us is specialization trumps generalization as we move forward. In the past, mostly generalized blockchains, right? Everyone is doing everything or anything on the same chain. But today, I'm not sure how many of you use iPhone, how many of you actually tried Tesla's autonomous driving cars. They're all specialized companies doing specialized things, and they can do it really well because they own full stack. Full stack means if you want to build the best app, you need to own the hardware. That's iPhone. Even Tesla, they try to build a car, try to build apps, but they actually own the computer chips. Like they actually customize computer chips so that in the hardware level, so that it can actually do the calculation really fast, real life, to make the autonomous driving work. So for us, we believe if we want to build the best app experience or even the app store experience, we need to own a blockchain. So that's why we make Akala, right? This is the specialization era. So I'll skip all of those and go right into it. So for Akala, we really believe the future is going to be sort of the hybrid way for us to deliver the experience. We create this new financial center, a truly decentralized stablecoin, decentralized reserve bank as the engine to power everything on top of it. And then ultimately, we may also connect back to the real world so that folks can actually use familiar technology to interact with Akala. And another stream could be metaverse, and also could be just individual users. So those are full spectrum of users that we look forward to actually serve. So let's go right into it. So this is the concept of the App Store for finance. As what we are building. So we build the engine. So you can think about us as the iPhone engine, right? So we own the hardware. We can customize the hardware so that the UX can look so much better than if you use, say, Android, because Android is only a software company. It really rely on, say, Samsung to deliver the hardware level experience. So we are really the iPhone camp where we can customize the blockchain to make the experience really good. But of course, we are at very early stage of really delivering a lot of those. So for example, some built-in customization. So one thing is also mentioned by Gav today is the economic model, right? So if you're building smart contract, you are basically imprisoned by the EVM's economic policy. If you're asked to pay ETH as gas fee, there's no way you can change that at all. There's no way. But on the testnet that we have for Akala, we recognize, that if you are going to settle transactions, not just for degens, right? I think us degens, like we use DeFi protocol every day. It's very kind of like used to paying this odd gas fee in a different token, which goes up and down in price 50% at a time. But for real life transactions, for example, Visa card settling their payments for tens of thousands of users, they would require a stable currency to pay for it, or any currency they prefer. This not just true for Visa card, but also for any of the real businesses when they run their business. They need predictability. So because the way that the Polkadot is structured, we are free to change the economic policy. So in our platform, transaction fees can be paid in any currency, so including stablecoin. So that's a very tiny, subtle innovation, but this shows how much more you can customize and be able to fine tune for your specific use case. For us, it's like finance. And then another thing that we focus on, if you say one thing about Akala, that is stablecoin, right? Yes, we're the DeFi hub, we're the liquidity hub, but all of those is to actually kickstart this reserve bank that we are creating for Web3 for Polkadot. Without the reserve bank, everything else, you're building on shaky grounds, right? If you're building your DeFi on top of USDC or USDT, nothing against those, right? We're going to collaborate with them and they are going to power our liquidity as well. But I'm talking about really building the decentralized infrastructure is you need a decentralized reserve bank to actually power this lower level. Once you have those, right? Once you have the decentralized reserve bank, the commercial banks are easy. Those can be just smart contracts. Those are folks like Aave, Compound. They're really your commercial banks, right? They have retail customers, and then they kind of rely on the reserve bank to kind of leverage and then use the reserve of the ecosystem. For example, in where we are doing is like dot derivatives, Bitcoin, ETH, they are really the gold of the new era. And of course, in the dot ecosystem, the gold can actually give birth to smaller gold bars because dot has this yield built in to its token. And then that creates entirely new economy that very few people actually understand. If you understand, you will see Akala is doing this tiny little bit in the ecosystem. There's so much more, very like reachable innovations that you can do around the derivative and dot staking economy and create a lot of interesting products just out of those, right? So you can see this, like the pie is so big that we are only touching a little bit of that, and hopefully, you can get inspired and build something out of it after today. So the stuff that we're offering, obviously stablecoin as a base layer, but in order to kind of like support the community, there's also EVM Plus that are still under R&D. The palette has been finished, but the client-side experience is still being polished. Once that's done, it will be Ethereum compatible. But most importantly, it's an innovation that is going to use all the really cool stuff that we just built, right? So including the customizable economic policies like transaction fees, on-chain keepers. So you no longer need to run off-chain keepers to kind of worry about what if transaction couldn't get sent to on-chain, and kind of like liquidate your positions and things like that. Everything is on-chain. So a number of those are available within our EVM platform, as well as compatibility. So both Polkadot users as well as Ethereum users like MetaMask and Polkadot.js can both use the same virtual machine to build stuff on top of it that can certainly be compatible for the Ethereum smart contract experience, but most importantly, that can also leverage the cross-chain capability that Substrate provides and Polkadot provides. So yeah, so that's that. And then if you want a visual view, this is what it looks like. At the bottom is Polkadot, and then on top of it, we have built-in liquidity and the decentral bank powered by the Akala dollar. That's really where the juice is, because it leverages on dot and dot derivatives, and then it can actually build a lot more stuff on top of it. And then the top layer on top is the open protocol layer. This is initially we'll use Ethereum virtual machine, but then later on there could be other virtual machines powered by WebAssembly, more advanced versions that we can actually just install and then be able to power the applications. And then, yeah, so the folks that we are serving, not just, so we're certainly going to serve DeFi users, individuals, but more so serve protocols, serve also institutions, fintech, basically folks who can deliver the experience back into individuals, right? My mom and dad, basically, everyday user. And that requires us to empower dApp developers, protocol developers to build on top of us, and having some shared vision. Like if you are ambitious, you want to go beyond just building another U farm, you actually want to build structured, unstructured products, or savings account, stable U product that are actually able to integrate back into fintech. And we are all here for those type of innovation and integration. So the stuff that we did with Current.com is basically Current is serving the innovate from a top down. So they are user experienced mobile app, neobanking infrastructure, and then we are at the background. We have liquid staking, so that's a stable yield generation engine, and we can directly kind of integrate with them. But that's only one sort of use case scenario. And use the Akala dollar, they can also do some leverage yield products for their clients as well. But those are very, very beginning of the integration. So you can imagine we're building the sandwich, right? So as more open protocol comes out, and then together we are able to compose those into end user products and then integrate them back to all of these partners, so that the goal is really to get everyday people to use and benefit from crypto without even knowing they are using crypto, right? Yeah, a fancier picture. Yeah, so I've kind of mentioned those integrations, audits. Yeah, so we've already launched a DeFi hub. This is relatively degen version because it's more expert sort of UX on there. Still quite complicated, not quite serving the everyday people, but it serves as an example of how things would look like. But down the track, yeah, we'll continue to innovate when Akala launches. Yeah, so for builders, so I think I thought I'll bring some gift today, which is some ideas that you could build, I guess. So we're still very, very early stage for Karura and Akala, right? We barely just launched, only just bootstrapped the native liquidity on Karura. So 1% of KSM on there, $300 million TVL, and that's just like local economy native. We haven't even opened up our bridge, which will bring international trade. We haven't even opened up our EVM, so that will bring external sort of protocol developers. So very, very early stage. But even that, still there's a lot of business going on. So a few ideas, simple to get started with. So DeFi dashboards. For Akala launch in particular, that's going to be very interesting because we have this $1 billion worth of LC DOT, so liquid crowd loan DOT, available. You can imagine this token is going to be redeemable to DOT 1-to-1 only in 96 weeks, not on day one, right? So there will be some folks needing some liquidity for this token. So there could be a discount, right? And it's going to make very interesting arbitrage and also yield generation opportunities. So you could compose the components that we have by using your DOT, and then you can basically generate a yield using LDOT, a tokenized version of it, so liquid dot, to have a yield bearing dot, and then use that. You can leverage on your borrowing your stablecoin. The net APY for that is I'm predicting here, so 16% for staking yield, maybe 3% for interest rate. So that's 12 and 13% net APY for borrowing. So you're getting paid to borrow. And then out of those, you could do an arbitrage like trading for discounted LC dot, because LC dot is safe because it's going to be 100% redeemable for $1 in 2 years' time. Any discount you get is basically the yield, right? If you get 20% discount, that's 2-year yield, 10% a year. Well, of course, this is like very rough, right? So with all that process, you could eventually get from a raw form of dot and all the way through to LC dot, probably other combinations, and then you could get I don't know, doubled or even tripled different type of yield, like 35% to 50% or even more, just by going through this process, right? So certainly, you know, as at Akala, we're not going to build everything ourselves. So there are probably already folks in the community building maybe one pager, right? How to zap all of those transactions together, batch them together, and then give you a certain percentage of yield. And then what are the risks, right? So you have to look after your position. Maybe you just make it like 400% very safe to start with, and then have that for the users. So it's going to be a killer app, right? With one pager. This is all where Instant Deb has got started. So they basically is a front end, right? They don't even need to write a smart contract, deploy anything. They're front end, but they serve a particular user group that look for convenience and one-click experience. And this has a really, really interesting pathway, because sooner or later, if you are the user funnel, you have lots of users. And once we open up EVM, you then can deploy your smart contract, and then you aggregate those users through your smart contract, which is a value extraction layer. And you can do a lot more smarter strategy at that point, and then be able to serve those community members. So, well, so someone if take that idea, then that would be really cool. And then the second thing is arbitrage opportunities. There are already a number of liquidation events happen on Kusama. Folks actually managed to pick up 40% discounted KSM on there. So certainly, mostly because there's not so many people arbitraging at the time. There are still, because those are the people who took the 40% profit. But there could be more people probably benefit from running liquidation bots, market making bots, etc. And the third area that you can innovate is always think about Akala dollar, because that is the stuff that we're going to push. Everything we do, right? Liquid staking, LC dot, everything we do is actually trying to bootstrap Akala dollar's liquidity from a supply side. And then there's also a demand side. Once there's commercial bank open up, right? Money markets, and also maybe leverage trading, payment integration, then it will drive the supply and demand of Akala dollar, and actually in circulation and usage in various different type of users. So that is also an area that we look for innovation and collaboration. And the last one is just a more specific idea of stable yield. So there's many ways that you can create stable products, especially on Polkadot, because you do have this relatively stable staking yield built into it. So you can certainly innovate around that. So yeah, so I'll probably just leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to take and Sully stop at. I think we can take all evening and night to hear you further, Beth. That was great. But I think we won't be able to cover a lot of questions for you, though you have clarified quite a bit about Akala and what's on your mind ahead. So this is what we have from someone called Harsh. So what do you think would be the challenges that Akala or even Polkadot have to face while scaling in the future?
Yeah, so if you're building something completely different, it's always very hard, because you not only have to convince people you're tech, but you also have to be miles better to even be able to move some of the users, I mean, especially some of the developers across to support you.
Right.
So I think Polkadot has done that in the last 3 years. That's why it took so long, right? To even bootstrap the initial ecosystem. For Akala, it will be slightly better, but it will still be the very challenging road ahead, because we are also building at a very low level using a very new tech stack. But we kind of chose that path. We don't like easy. So yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay. Next one we have is, why Akala over the other stable coins, and how does Akala maintain its stability?
Yeah. So before you ask that question, then you have to ask why Polkadot over other ecosystem, right? So by nature, we are Web3. So by nature, we are Internet of Blockchains. So by nature, we are not only decentralized, but actually decentralized and connected and multi-chain. So that goes to with this internet infrastructure, like blockchain internet infrastructure, the Akala stablecoin is the native stablecoin for the internet, powered by the native economy, as well as cross-chain economy, such as Bitcoin and others. And with that goes, then you always need a reserve bank to power everything, right? So once you go truly decentralized and Web3 in nature, and there's no brainer to see what things go from here, right? So yeah.
That's true. This one was by Manish Gadia. So Manish, I hope that answers your question. And if any of you further, we have a lot of questions for you, Bet, but it's a little too late in the night for you and we don't want to keep you waiting anymore. So we'll let you go. So have a great night ahead. And thank you for joining us despite it being about 3 a.m. now almost. So, and all the very best for what lies ahead. Great times, though you are very humble to say it's nothing at all yet, and it's just the beginning. But a lot of love from all of us out here at Polkadot India and India as a whole itself. So thank you so much for being with us. Guys, a big shout out to her from all of us. So I'm sure all of you are with Polkadot India when we are wishing Bet all the luck, and Akala all the luck from our end. Right. Thanks,
Yeah, thank
Bet.
you so much. All the best
Yes,
to you guys.
thank you.